Collaboration, collaboration, the magic of audience cross-pollination. You've been preaching to your choir, here's the magic multiplier to help you grow your congregation.
Hello, friend. Thanks for pressing play on this episode. I'm Jen, the head broad in charge at the Brassy Broadcasting Company. And joining me in the studio today is
Alex Perry from Practically Speaking.
Alex, what are we talking about in this episode?
Today, we're talking about what do we do when things go off the rails?
Never happens.
Everything goes perfectly when you do a podcast?
Every single time.
Amazingly, when I go to speak or my clients go to speak, everything goes perfectly too.
Based on the fact that we've been sitting here recording this series of podcasts for a while, would you say that everything has gone perfectly?
No. In fact, I would say that we experienced the vast majority of the things that we're going to talk about today. And these are universal for people who get outside of their house or stay inside of their house.
Right.
And talk.
So true. I think we should start off with what happened to us early this morning when we started with technology fail.
Dun, dun, dun. This is a big, scary thing for people.
It is.
So we're so dependent upon our technology. And oftentimes we use it, in public speaking, we use it as a crutch because it makes us feel comfortable. We don't want to go in without something, whether it's our PowerPoint slides or our nifty little video. Our, microphones are a necessary evil in my world, right? You can't speak to 200 people without one.
My world too.
Unless, yeah, right. You gotta have them for. It's amazing how that works. How podcasts are.
We like our microphones
just a little. But the thought of technology failing creates a lot of anxiety for people, and I'm sure it creates a prolific amount for you guys.
Yes.
We had a technology fail this morning.
We did, because there appeared some little crackle came out, and so I did what anyone knows to do, which is reboot. And by the grace of the podcasting gods, that fixed the issue. But I just had to pause, take a breath. It worked. I didn't freak out. I just methodically did the troubleshooting and fixed the problem.
I love that you say reboot, because in your world, a reboot is possible. In my world, a reboot is generally not possible, or is heavily frowned upon, because when your technology fails and you're in front of a live audience, holy cow, you don't have a lot of time to fix it before people get antsy. And I love the fact that you said pause, because that's the first thing I teach people to do, is it's okay to take a pause. If all of a sudden you go to click on that nifty little YouTube video and it doesn't go, it's okay to pause for a second. Give yourself a moment to troubleshoot. The next thing you can do is take a break. We were forced into a break because your technology failed. However, in the speaking world, you may have to release the group if the timing of that feels right and it doesn't feel too awkward. And you're like, I can't go on without this. It's never going to happen. Take a break, see if you can get with the organizers and fix it. Not my favorite option. My third option is actually my favorite option, which is go on.
Yes.
Move on without it. You should know your content well enough that if a technology flub, fluster, whatever happens, that you can move past it. If you're feeling super brave and it's a video or, some sort of sound thing, you can act that out. I have a friend, we have a mutual friend who did that during one of his keynotes, that he had his technology failed. He was going to show a little video from a clip of Friends, and the technology did not work. So he decided to act it out live on stage. And that was probably much more engaging for his audience, actually, than the video itself. So feel free to improv. I think that improv, we haven't talked about it in this series, but there is a lot to be said for ad-libbing, going with the flow, and not letting stuff fluster you, because your audience will feel it if you are flustered. So set that tone for, hey, all right, well, that didn't work. Let's move on.
Right. And this is going to be even better.
This is going to be even better. Yes. And I think that was true with our little podcast today.
I think we needed that break.
Yes.
We came back stronger.
We came back stronger. I feel like we should sing now.
I know.
There's
exactly.
There's a song waiting in the cusp of this, but I don't know what it is.
It's Kelly Clarkson.
Oh, what doesn't kill you?
It's always Kelly Clarkson.
It's always Kelly Clarkson. All right. In my world, there's also another big fear, and I'm interested to see how you handle this, but I call it losing the audience. And I'm sure you guys lose your audience, but do you know when you lose your audience?
It's hard to tell, but it's getting easier as the analytics get better. You can see where people start to drop off.
Oh.
How scary is that?
Scary and exciting, because then it tells you something.
Right, it does.
I always say that.
Thank you for reframing that for me, Alex.
It's information, right? So if you're speaking and you can see people dropping off,
right,
that's information, isn't it?
It is information.
And the information tells you what? That you need to change what you're doing.
Yes.
That something's going on one way or the other. So when I think about that, the way I coach people through losing an audience, especially in live presentation, there are, again, 3 things that you can do for that. Number 1 is ask a question. We're hardwired that when we hear questions, we automatically want to answer them. So you can engage people's brains that way. I would imagine in a podcast, you could do the same thing. You could ask a strategically placed question, not that anybody can answer back, but you could let a question hang, or ask your podcast guest, maybe the one that's saying and spraying and going on too long, a question and flip that.
Yes.
So people stay engaged. You can also take a break, because many times it's very hard to sit for long periods of time and listen and or watch things.
Yes.
So that's another way to get your crowd going. And then I'm interested on your take on this third one, which is do something unexpected. If you want to grab an audience's attention, say they've gotten unruly, say they're just yammering and they're talking and they're like, and scrolling through their cell phones, and you're like, oh my gosh, seriously, guys, I can't believe I'm talking. I'm sharing very important information here. Do the unexpected. Turn the lights off. That gets people's attention all the time, right? What happened? Like, that takes you back to 2nd grade, and you're like, oh, fire drill. You will get people's attention that way. You can stand up on a desk. You can do something and get the attention of the crowd, even just 1 or 2 members, because we know that with the crowd mentality, if you get 1 or 2 people to look a certain way, then everyone else will start looking.
Right.
So unexpected is a great thing to do. Can you do that on a podcast?
If you lose your audience, they're gone with a podcast because they've just hit stop and moved on to something else. Hopefully, they will come back to another episode. I mean, we all have episodes that maybe aren't the greatest.
No, we do.
None of these.
I was going to say,
but
all of these are amazing. So if you've missed some of them, perhaps you should go back and listen.
Exactly. I agree. But occasionally, I've heard that not everyone is hitting it out of the park with every episode of their podcast. So it's your job as a podcast host and producer to know when to cut it off. Like if you're disinterested in your guest or in what you're telling people, then your audience is probably disinterested.
You know what? I think that's a really great tip, is when you start to feel energy waning, that's a good sign that it might be time for a break or a change or a modification.
Yeah.
So
just wrap it up.
Wrap it up. We've all gone on too long. What a great way to phrase that. I like that. Another thing that my clients talk about, or I talk about with speakers all the time, are what I consider to be body problems.
Oh, this ought to be good.
Oh, yeah. The uncomfortable things that come about. Mine are generally come from fear, although I have been asked, what do you do if your stomach growls in the middle of a presentation?
What do you do?
Well, I crowdsourced this idea because I don't claim to know everything. And oftentimes my audience comes up with some pretty amazing stuff. So there were really 2 camps of people, which is acknowledge it. I'm hungry, man. I could totally go for some lunch. How about you guys? Yeah. Or don't acknowledge at all. Or actually, there's 3 camps, right? Or it was the polite, oh, goodness, so sorry for that. I think it depends on your level of comfort. I tend to try to own my stuff. So if my stomach were to growl really loudly on stage, I'd be like, obviously I did not get more than a protein bar this morning. I need something else, right? Or is anyone else starving?
Yeah.
Right? Hotel bagels aren't cutting it. So that's a fun, interesting body problem sort of thing. But some of the most common things that I hear about is that my heart is pounding.
Oh.
My face gets red.
Uh-huh.
I lose all the saliva out of my mouth.
Oh, that's bad for podcasters.
Super bad for any speaker.
Yeah.
Any speaker. And we've been speaking a long time, and we're both chugging the water because it's hard to keep hydrated because we're constantly sucking in dry air and spitting it back out. Whew. Hands shaking, things like that. I would assume what you might hear in podcasting are shaky voice, a shaking voice. And how do you handle those sorts of things? So what I tell people when they have that whole heart pounding, heart racing, I'm feeling a little sweaty, I'm feeling a little anxious. Number one is acknowledge that is occurring. I'm big into mentally reframing that as excitement. Our bodies don't know the difference. So you get the same sorts of reactions when you're super excited. So I like to get people into the right mindset that that's excitement, not necessarily fear. Second thing I tell people to do is breathe. Now, you're a musician, so you'll recognize this. I teach diaphragmatic breathing. So getting a good deep breath, not shallow breathing like most of us do, really helps. So that helps get oxygenated blood flow to the brain, which helps with any sort of red facial flushing. So you think about it, whenever you get an injury or something happens to you, all the blood rushes to that spot.
Yeah.
So if we're feeling like it's all going to rush to your face. If you can breathe and start to regulate that will help your heart rate. That will help the blood flow. I tell people who tend to exhibit high energy when they're nervous that do what they can to go burn that off. So go walk around, make sure you exercise that morning, do something to burn off the excess energy because it does show. And if you appear anxious, other people will feel anxious.
Right.
Shaking voice, same thing, is a big, deep breath. So a lot of times we're shaking because we're not have a lot going on. And right. So you're not getting enough breath support to carry a good, heavy, loud tone when you speak.
The shaky voice is, especially if you're nervous or if you get asked a really difficult question, like an emotional question, you start to get shaky and overcome with emotion, and you just want to get through the question.
Oh, wow. I didn't even think about that you probably touch on that quite a bit in podcasting. Some podcasts probably do deal with highly emotional charged things. So getting your guest to breathe through that, making sure, number one, that they're even comfortable enough to answer the question.
Right.
And in those scenarios, some amount of emotion is fine. I would argue.
Yes.
That we expect that, that we expect to hear some of that. If we hear it the whole time, or you suddenly burst into tears,
right,
and you're talking about data analytics, maybe there's a disconnect there. We talked about consistency and congruency earlier, so maybe that doesn't fit, but for an emotionally charged topic.
How do you recover then from that? Because I've been on stage, I was at a gig, I played a song that I wrote, and I lost it in the third verse. Like, lost it. Started crying.
Oh.
How do you help people like move past that? Because they're already like, oh man, I just totally lost it. So to not beat yourself up, but then to kind of regain your composure and move on.
So breaking, of course.
Yes.
Pausing, breaking. If you've got that big, you can't cry like that if you're deep breathing. So you can't sob and deep breathe at the same time. So if you are with someone who is doing that, getting them to breathe deeply. And the best way to do that, start doing it yourself. Sit next to them and get them feeling it with you.
Okay.
Right? So you're going to breathe in, you're going to count, you're going to walk them all the way through that.
Got it.
But, and if you're doing it and you're on stage yourself, I think you have to acknowledge at that point.
Yeah.
And then
I promise not to sing any more sad songs after that one. I kept it pretty pretty
Yeah.
upbeat.
Pretty
after
upbeat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and how I would coach that in the speaking world is that because people will ask, well, should I talk about this? If you suspect that this is something that's going to trigger something within you
Mhm.
that's going to make you sob on
Yeah.
that sort of level, then maybe it's not ready to be shared.
Right.
There are messages that are ready to be shared
Uh-huh.
with the world and messages that aren't, and that's okay. I think sometimes we feel the pressure, like I have to share all of my stuff with you in
Right.
order. No, that's not true. You know yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We all get caught off guard sometimes.
Yes.
But you know yourself well enough. If that story is not ready, then it should not be shared. And you can test out that story with safer venues.
Yes.
We talked about that earlier too.
Yes, we did. It's all coming back.
It's all coming back full circle. All the things are coming back as we are concluding this amazing series on what to do with all the things to deliver your dynamic message. I can't believe we're here. I can't believe we're at the end.
I know. I'm sad. So I'm already looking forward to the next series that we're going to do.
Where we're going to deep dive even more into all the things that make your message delivery phenomenal. Podcast, speaking, you name it.
All the things.
All the things. We would love it if you would share all the things with us that you have learned from this series. And again, we're going to ask you, don't bogart this. Share that with the world. You can find us on LinkedIn. I'm Alexandra, RU Perry, RU, F as in Frank, ATTO-Perry on LinkedIn. And Jen is
Jen Eads, EDDS on LinkedIn.
We'd love for you to connect with us. Share this message, share what you've loved. And it has been our pleasure to be a part of your world.
Thanks for listening. Now get out in the world and do some good. Is that where we end this podcast?
No. Are you saying that we've gone on too long? Are you feeling uncomfortable?
No, not at all. Not at all.